What's good everyone, yadiiiigg, 4 eyes, 2 G's here, and today we're here to talk about Madeintyo, who, at this point, I guess is a bit of a SoundCloud OG, as he was a part of that first wave of artists to successfully transition from SoundCloud to the mainstream, with his breakout smash hit Uber Everywhere. However, since the heights of that song, unfortunately he hasn't been able to stay that relevant, and I don't necessarily want to say he has fallen off, because he has had a couple more hits with I Want and Skateboard P going gold and platinum respectively, and even Ned Flanders is starting to get a bit of attention, but in terms of holding that relevant position in the culture as someone who is in the mix, who's poppin', whose name is on the charts, whose albums are doing numbers, and whose name is in those conversations, his name just doesn't come up as often and doesn't hold the same weight as the people he came up with, like your Yoddies, Cardis, Uzis, etc. And today I wanted to look at why. And let's firstly begin with the music. I remember finding out about Tokyo sometime when Uber Everywhere just started to bubble, and at that time the video hadn't even hit 1 million on YouTube yet. I sussed out his other music and I loved what he had to offer. He had the sauce, catchy flows, and that wavy, kinda light and poppy synth heavy production from K Swisher made for a new style at that time back in 2015. However, one thing that has held him back is a lack of progression and a unique style. Sure, back in 2015 when the SoundCloud scene wasn't so flooded, his style may have been more unique, but as we've seen the scene explode and this style of production become the trend, basically anybody can do what Tokyo was doing. His flows for the most part are pretty simple, his topics are pretty samey, generic braggadocio rapping, and then his production style has become a wave of its own. And as time progressed and those in that SoundCloud lane like Cardi or Uzi were evolving and developing new styles as the years went on, Tokyo just didn't do the same, and still even his music released in 2018 isn't that different and doesn't really show any meaningful progression from his output in 2015. So I think a lot of the initial interest people had in him faded over time because he really didn't have more than that one style. And once the SoundCloud scene exploded, it made it even harder for him to stand out because this style was so easy to do and replicate, so it became very run of the mill. And before we move on, just a reminder, please make sure to like the video if you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel if you aren't, follow me in all social medias as well, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video. Also, I'm curious to know everyone's favorite Madeintyo song, so make sure to comment yours below. Anyways, getting back to it, and one thing that I also think hurt Tokyo was him missing out on that XXL spot in 2016. And I don't know what was going through XXL's mind when they picked all those names from SoundCloud but Tokyo, because out of everybody on that list, at that time at least, Uber Everywhere had to be one of the most poppin' songs out, and Tokyo could have definitely made that list. I think this decision really hurt him in the long run. Even though he got it the year after, the 2016 XXL list was an iconic cover, and the amount of attention this received was unparalleled, and this spilled over to the rappers that were on the list. And I think especially people like Yachty, Uzi, 21, Kodak benefited huge from the virality of this list, whereas by the time 2017 came around, Tokyo was far from a freshman. Everybody and their mother bumped Uber Everywhere last year, so for one, it felt unnecessary to include him, and secondly, it didn't really help expose him to new people because everybody knew him from Uber Everywhere. Whereas, although there's no way to know for sure, I do feel like if he had got on the list in 2016, it would have done much more for his career relative to where he was at in his come up at that time. And lastly, I think part of the reason as to why he doesn't have that core, cultish fanbase like an Uzi or a Cardi is due to a lack of aesthetic and star power. And star power is one of those things that is so hard to quantify and compare because you can't quite put your finger on what it is exactly. But I feel like compared to someone like Cardi or Uzi, Tokyo hasn't been able to draw people into his movement and have people vested into his aesthetic, charisma, image, and every move in the same way. Maybe it's a lack of calculated marketing or that he just doesn't have that aesthetic, but the ability to create this ecosystem of fans online with Instagrams, Twitters, and YouTubes with content dedicated towards you that creates a buzz for your music without you having to do anything is partly what makes artists like Cardi and Uzi so prolific and inescapable on the internet. And by comparison, Tokyo just doesn't have that. And I think this ties back to the point about his music. You can't hate on Tokyo or call his music bad because every project of his always has a standout banger or two. But overall, in terms of the wider landscape of the 2018 SoundCloud or trap scene, he just isn't overly noteworthy and doesn't stand out enough. Not in terms of image, image, not in terms of aesthetic, and definitely not in terms of music either. So this has led to him getting overtaken by people in his lane like Cardi or Uzi that are more noteworthy and stand out in those regards. And that's all from me today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. If you haven't yet, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, follow me in all social medias, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video. Also, make sure to comment your favorite Madeintyo song in the comments.